I think that Mr. Trump believes that sanctions, tariffs, whatever you want to call it, are the way to go to play international affairs. That you can put pressure on governments doing that, and that you make money yourself. You play to your domestic audience. So I believe it's a major part of Trump's toolkit, if you like, of dealing with the rest of the world. How serious that's going to be, however, is another matter because we've seen over the last 6 months that sometimes tariffs are announced and then they're backed off from. And so, if there's a lot of resistance, we may see backing off again. What we see, it seems, is every time there's an issue that comes up, the first thing that President Trump seems to want to go to is to impose tariffs unilaterally and that try to force other countries to agree. Typically, there's some movement and he gets some of what he wants, so he clearly thinks this is an effective way. But oftentimes, if there's great resistance, he backs down. And so I think we are still in the early days of this particular round, and so I can't say whether it's going to be successful or not. I think that Mr. Trump believes this is the way to proceed in international affairs. Uh, in other words, using the threat of this kind of sanction against countries, whether it will work or whether it will backfire remains to be seen in the particular case. I mean, we've seen again and again the announcement of sanctions and then having those sanctions then being walked back. So. Um, I think it's a mistake to assume there's a necessary direct line in every case between what is threatened and what will happen. And I would urge anyone looking at what's said to say, okay, where are we going to be in 30 days? Because again and again, things that have been threatened then have been negotiated back. And I think that there's much less attention to that than there should be, certainly by any country that might be affected. And of course, the reality is this: the more you back down, the more you announce a policy and then back down, the more likely other countries will subsequently assume you're going to back down and be less willing to listen to you. Sanctions are and tariffs are fine if you impose them and you hold them. They may be even effective. But if people begin to see that these are threats that may not survive more than a few news cycles, then I think you'll see people challenging them more and more, and you'll gain a reputation not only being unreliable, but someone that you can ignore, and that changes the nature of the game too. I think Turkey is in a position where it feels it has a lot to offer on the table, and that threats like this from the Americans are something you have to navigate. But whether Turkey will simply fall in line with what the Americans want, I don't know. My guess is that Turkey will try to get some of other things it wants as side payments, and that what we'll see is something that won't be nearly as dramatic as the initial threat was.
How about smaller countries like Azerbaijan? Do you think that pressure is going to work?
Well,
Something can stop
I
by?
think the same principles obtain. The more often it happens that somebody says you're threatening, this is what you've said you're going to do, and then you back away from it. The more countries are going to decide they can try ignoring it or end running it somehow. It's obviously true, as your question suggests, that smaller powers are less able to resist and make those calculations than larger ones. Azerbaijan is in no way in a position of Turkey in terms of this. On the other hand, again, the more often this happens, the longer we go along this route, the more likely it is that smaller powers, including countries like Azerbaijan, will also test the limits in the hopes that they can get the Americans to back down, to not go all the way with they've threatened to do. And so I would say it's best not to assume that what's been threatened will necessarily happen and remain in place for very long, and that given that, we'll have to look at the intensity of negotiations between Azerbaijan and the United States. We'll have to see uh, who's visiting whom, who's talking to whom, and also what side benefit payments may be on the table. I mean, if a country is if someone threatens a country with tariffs, one way to get those taken off is to show that you're very useful in some other way. Are you cooperating with what Washington wants to do, for example, with containment of Iran? A reminder of Azerbaijan's willingness to do that would be a powerful signal that would be I think would be attended to by many in Washington, who would say, why are we threatening sanction or threatening tariffs here when this is a country that's very important in terms of some of our other strategic goals?" And so that's what I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying that Azerbaijan is in an advantageous position. I am saying that the record of the last 6 months suggests that we often overread the first announcements of tariffs, and that in time those are walked back one way or another without much fanfare often.
Mr. Goebel, I want to ask you about the arrest of Adnan Ahmadzadeh, a high-profile former SOCAR executive. His detention came just before President Aliyev's trip to the United States for the UN summit. How significant do you think this arrest is? Do you see this as a long-expected move by Azerbaijan to address concerns, international concerns about and allegations that Russian oil was being sold under the label of Azerbaijani crude?
I think that this is a pretty murky case, but I think it's not unexpected. This is a way you send signals of your how what you think about. You get attention this way. Once you have a name of an individual attached to a problem, it's much easier to gain attention. Azerbaijan is concerned that Russia is doing things, adulterating oil, selling it, trying to end run various sanctions regimes. So I see this as one more step in what we've been watching the last 6 months or so of Azerbaijan feeling that Russia is not doing what it wants, and that Azerbaijan is going to respond by taking an ever more independent position. You know, what's Moscow going to do? Is it going to arrest more people, more Azerbaijanis inside the Russian Federation? That's certainly a possibility. Are we going to see more problems in the relationship? I would expect so. But this is the kind of step by step action that is how international politics is currently being played. So I was not surprised. I think this was the kind. I'm sure there's enough evidence that you can make the case that a SOCAR executive uh, was working for the wrong people as far as Baku is concerned.